As soon as Dong Joo manages to escape the premises safely, the police forces, searching for her, arrive at the location. Nok-do talks the men into believing that Dong Joo had gone the other way around. Despite them tracking her down that path earlier, the leader of the police bureau reports everything to the king. However, he doesn't tell him what happened with Nok-do. The king tells him that one girl must be no issue, and dismisses the topic. The police head immediately heads out of the palace and tells one of his men to investigate what Nok-do does, and who he meets and everything about his family as well. The next day, the king along with a handful of soldiers including Nok-do and the royal guard head to the royal shrines to pay a visit to the dead. Little do they know, Dong Joo is also disguised as a man and following them, hoping to assassinate the king during his journey. Back at the palace, the queen receives her half medallion from one of the soldiers, who tells her that it was given to him by one of the royal guards. She is extremely thankful for it, but her plans are not yet over. She quickly races to the prison and meets with Yoon, whom she orders to be released immediately. After releasing the man, she asks him if it was true that her son was still alive. Yoon confirms that not only was he alive, he was here in the palace as the king's royal guard. The queen, while pleased that her son was alive, gets concerned as he was with the king, and requests him to go to his aid immediately. Yoon heads out and almost immediately comes across Dong Joo in disguise. The two share an intense look as if they know each other, but neither of them says anything, and just pass by each other. On their way to the shrine, the king and his party decide to stay within a day's distance to the shrine. That night, while the king and his ministers are in the room having dinner, Nok-do heads outside pretending that he will check the surrounding area for intruders. As he goes around the compound trying to clear his head, he stops by a pile of flowers and remembers Dong Joo, hoping that wherever she is safe. Apparently, Dong Joo had arrived there as well, but just as Nok-do stands to check around, the minister calls him inside. The minister, who had also been conspiring with Nyang to depose the king, reminds Nok-do that he had to take the king captive within the next few days so that the revolt can be completed with ease. Nok-do tells him that he knows what must be done. The next day, an officer of the palace comes rushing from the capital bearing grave news for the king. The queen had helped Yoon escape from prison, and now he was gone along with the queen. Angered by this betrayal, the king gets agitated. He tells the soldier to return and strengthen the forces inside the palace. He also tells the others that they will make haste to the shrine so that he can return back home as fast as they can. From right outside the compound, Dong Joo points her crossbow at the king, but right before she pulls the trigger, Nok-do accidentally steps before the king and stops her attempt. By the time she tries again, the king is already leaving the area. She tries to pursue the king but is immediately stopped by a patrolling soldier who puts a blade to her neck, ready to execute her. Fortunately, Yoon comes in just in time to stop the soldier from attacking her, and the two manage to kill the soldier instead. After that, Yoon confronts Dong Joo about the risks involved in the assassination that she was about to attempt. He asks her if her parents really told her to avenge her death by killing the king, or if that was something she pushed upon herself. Dong Joo thinks back to the time when her mother took her last breath, and remembers that she told her nothing of that sort. However, Dong Joo doesn't know what else she can do to find the peace that she so desperately craves. She believes that only the king's death can give her what she wants. Despite the king wanting to leave immediately for the shrines, the weather suddenly becomes unfavorable, and they are forced to spend the night at the same place once more. This time he calls Nok-do to have some wine with him, and the two get to discuss each other's lives. The king asks Nok-do about his parents, and Nok-do tells him that he respects his father very much regardless of his opinion of Nok-do. The king claims that he is envious of the relationship he has with his father, and explains that if it wasn't for the prophecy, he would have loved to have his son by his side. But as things stand, he needs to die. Unable to control his emotions after hearing this, Nok-do heads out once more, and is again confronted by the minister, who presses him to take the king captive faster. Nok-do gets irritated and tells the minister that he will do whatever he pleases, whenever he pleases. He explains that he might kill the king right here. Just then he sees Dong Joo and goes after her into the forest. At his chambers, the police chief Beek arrives agitated, and tells the king the truth about Nok-do that his spy had uncovered. He reveals to the king that Nok-do was his son, the same boy that he wanted to kill several years ago. The king immediately gets up and heads outside with a small group of soldiers to find and kill Nok-do. The minister has his own group of armed forces ready to capture the king, as he believes that Nok-do has betrayed them. The minister's forces find the king's forces in the middle of the forest, and they immediately engage in battle. The king, however, manages to go deeper into the forest as the minister himself follows the king with a sword. As the king heads deeper into the forest, he suddenly encounters Dong Joo, who has her crossbow pointed to his chest. They come face to face near a cliff, and Dong Joo reveals her real name and the fact that she was here for revenge. She tells him about her grandfather whom the king had killed in cold blood. The king laughs and tells him that he didn't kill her grandfather in cold blood. He killed him because he and his family had conspired to take away his throne. He proudly explains that if he can kill his own son for the throne, there was no regret in him for killing her family. Dong Joo tears up after hearing what feelings the king had for his own son. She tells him that she would kill him here, and had no regret either because the king was already a dead man. He trusted no one and his courtiers all hated him, so he was dead more or less. As she points her crossbow ready to shoot, Nok Do arrives, and behind him the minister. The minister points his sword at Nok Do to kill him, and so instead of killing the king, she shoots down the minister to save Nok Do. As the king turns to look at what had happened, he slips, and, despite Dong Joo's effort to help him, he slips down the cliff into the river. Back at the capital, Nguyen and his forces take the opportunity of the king's absence to forcefully enter the palace and establish it as their own ground. Nok Do returns back to the camp and hears the news of the capital being captured. He explains that the king was lost in the forest and orders everyone to search for the king while he leaves with half of the forces to claim back the capital from Prince Nguyen. Nok Do bids farewell to Dong Joo, who has finally let go of her wish for revenge, and promises her that he will be back and they can spend the rest of their lives together, as he has no wish to take the throne to himself. When Nok Do finally arrives at the compound with his soldiers, the prince believes that he is there with the king and has fulfilled his oath. However, Nok Do points his sword at the men before him. Soon the entire force from the king's army arrives and the two armies are face to face. Just before they could begin their battle, the queen arrives announcing that the king had died in his travels. She declares that Nok Do was her son, the firstborn of the king, and therefore he was the new king by right and by birth. Yoon, who had accompanied Nok Do to battle, claims that the queen was indeed speaking the truth, and Nok Do was the new king because of the blood that flows within him. Nok Do as well tells everyone to be sensible and approach a more reasonable approach and avoid bloodshed, but the war-intent rebels begin their onslaught. Soon the whole courtyard is filled with bloodshed, with both parties losing countless members of their group. Nok Do takes his mother, the queen, aside to the royal quarters and tells her to hide. The queen tells him that he should become the new king and thus shouldn't go and endanger himself. However, once again Nok Do assures her that he has no intention of becoming king and only wishes to live with Dong Joo for the rest of his life as a normal man. The queen is happy to hear her son's decision. She only cares that he is happy and alive and gives her his blessings to go into war. After ensuring his mother's safety, Nok Do manages to lure the rest of Nguyen's soldiers into the interior courtyard of the royal quarters. He makes them feel that they are more powerful considering their numbers, and immediately after entering the courtyard, surrounds them all with the help of the reinforcement soldiers that Kim Suk has arrived there with. Regardless of having equal numbers now, both parties find it difficult to actually push through the other's forces and find a decisive victory. The battle rages on for a long time. At the royal quarters, as the second Queen Inmok rejoices in her husband's death and plans the next succession, suddenly one of her spies arrives with the news that the king was actually alive and was arriving with his forces at the palace. Quickly the queen chooses the winning side once more and goes to the king to tell him that Nok Do was trying to steal his throne. The angry king arrives as the battle rages on and stops them all. He points his sword at his own son, demanding to know why he had done such treason. He lets Nguyen off the hook and piles all of the blame on his own son. Nok Do doesn't resist and acknowledges all of the blame, as he knows that his father won't believe him no matter what he says. Hearing his son accept all his crimes, the king orders his men to capture him, as he himself goes away with Nguyen on to rest. As the soldiers close in on him, Dong Yoo arrives with her bow and saves him from them. Kim Suk and her soldiers then buy enough time for Dong Joo, Nok Do, and Yoon and his son to escape the premises unharmed. Thanks for watching. Subscribe and hit that like button to help our channel grow. Turn on the notifications so you won't miss any of our new videos. Thanks for watching.